And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First up, Monday morning's flying weather here showing good conditions, really not too shabby over the interior with good VFR. Marginal VFR along portions of the Arctic coast, marginal VFR along portions of the west coast here, and central Aleutians on the marginal side as well as Chimney too. And the southeast coast has a fair amount of marginal VFR with VFR up toward Juneau northward to Skagway, Glacier Bay area. And then for the afternoon, not much difference here, although VFR increases there over the southeast coast with some marginal VFR hanging on to the southern areas. Interior from Kodiak Island right up to the North Slope, VFR. Marginal VFR continues to the central and eastern Arctic coast, and then IFR holding along the northwest coast here, Seward Peninsula down to Norton Bay. But south of there, VFR to the Alaska Peninsula, and marginal VFR, St. Matthew Island, St. Lawrence Island to the Pribilofs. And now with the next front coming in and out west there, that's associated with a band of IFR that Tuesday morning pushes into the central Aleutians, Adak and Atka, and marginal VFR back in along the southwest coast. Marginal VFR still up there in the northwest and the eastern Arctic coast. In the mid and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, in other words, areas north of the eastern Alaska Range here, marginal VFR. South of the mountains, though, good VFR continues here right on down into Prince William Sound. And marginal VFR, mostly off the coast of the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon time frame, here, southern Panhandle looking still good with VFR. Marginal VFR to the north and along the North Gulf Coast of Prince William Sound. The interior staying VFR. North of the Brooks Range, though, North Slope, marginal VFR, IFR along the Arctic coast. Now that band of IFR with a weakening front pushes into the southwest coast. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, looking good for the Brooks Range tomorrow, at least in those areas. VFR in the forecast for both passes. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Rainy, VFR. Windy, VFR. Isabel, VFR. Mintesta, VFR. Tanita, VFR, and you guessed it, Portage, VFR, as well as Chilkoot and White. So all the passes, VFR, looking good for Monday. And for the freezing levels here, 2,000 feet, Shelikof Strait, up across southern Kenai Peninsula, and across the northern Panhandle tomorrow morning. At the surface, still way up here between St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Island. And from there, taking a look at icing, icing on the increase here with that next system way out there to the west there with the heaviest icing staying to the west of Chimney. Could be some potential icing here, St. Lawrence Island down in toward the St. Matthew Island area, otherwise out in the Bering Sea. And also some icing threat continues there for the southern southeast coast. And the jet stream here showing northwest winds across southern Alaska into the Gulf, 70 to 75 knots. Pretty light over the Panhandle and over the interior up to the Arctic coast. And 75 knot winds here at about out of the northwest there coming across eastern Bering Sea, and then stronger winds farther west there ahead of that next system. And at 9,000 feet, strongest winds here way out to the west ahead of the stronger front moving in up to 60 knots for the western Aleutians. Otherwise light for the eastern Bering Sea, the interior Gulf of Alaska Panhandle areas. And not much different at 3,000 feet, but there is, at this elevation, east winds 20 to 35 knots along the north slope of the Arctic coast. And very weak system here, maybe some 25-knot winds associated with that again, but the stronger winds out here to the west ahead of that front up to 60 knots there. Light winds for the southeast coast. And as far as turbulence goes, none of any significance over mainland Alaska, the Panhandle, and most of the Aleutians. It'll be out here to the west ahead of that front, and the increasing winds bringing considerable moderate turbulence at least as far east as Kiska Island tomorrow afternoon.